you seem to have been present in many of the defining moments of animation's history. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with the production of Roger Rabbit?
Yeah, Roger Rabbit was one of my favorite working experiences. It was a chance to work in London, and it's kind of funny because I had I had trouble getting into the Disney studio. I had applied to Disney's once or twice and been turned down. And when I was at when the Filmation studio was going out of business, I went to London to visit my friend Eric Goldberg at his studio called Pizzazz in Soho in London. And so we were doing commercials. And while I was there, I went up to have lunch at the Roger Rabbit crew. And I ran into another animator friend who said, "Why don't you go say hi to Dick?" I said, "Well, I haven't talked to Dick in a couple of years, and I think he's mad at a lot of people that I'm friends with. So I don't know what he thinks about me." And Chuck goes, "It only hurt for a minute." I go, "Oh, okay." So I stuck my head in the door and said, "Hi, Dick." And Richard Williams went, Sito, you have to work on this movie. You're hired." So, well, my wife's a checker. I go, "She's hired too." And he just took me by the hand and walked me into Don Hahn, the producer. He said, "Don, this is Tom Sito. He's funny. Tells stories. Hire him." And Don goes, "You're hired." And that was it. So like, okay, I'm on this picture, you know. But what was fun about Roger Rabbit was you grew up with all those old cartoons and you loved those old cartoons. And all through the 70s and 80s, you weren't allowed to do that kind of violent, crazy humor with characters hitting each other with frying pans and blowing each other up and, you know, hitting, you know, all that violent humor, because it was all told by psychologists that if you do that, you'll rot children's brains and they'll go mad. So, I don't know. But, I mean, I grew up all that stuff, and I never gave dynamite to anybody or or hit anybody with a mallet, you know, the big hammers. But anyway, so after all those restrictions, like when we were doing Fat Albert, it's a comedy show, but you can never do anything physical. Anytime you want to try to do any kind of comedy, they say you can't do that, can't do that. The only thing I could get away with was what's called spit takes, and a spit take is when a character goes like that. It's like that's like the only physical humor I could get in the show. So then we're on Roger Rabbit, and it's all this crazy humor. It's all this wild stuff, you know. And I read the script, and I was so used to movies where they start good and then they slowly cut all the good stuff out. So I went to Robert Zemeckis, the director, and said, "This is very good." I'm like, "Are we really going to do this?" And he almost looked insulted. He's like, "Of course we are." Like, great. I love it. And so just to get a chance to work with the old characters, you know, I got to animate some Sylvester, and I got to animate some Woody Woodpecker. And besides Roger, I killed a lot of the weasels. When all the weasels were dying, that's like I killed the weasels and everything. They're all falling over. And but it was just so much fun to work with those old characters. It was very hard because a lot of the stuff we were doing had to match to the live action exactly. And you know, when they started the movie, they originally did what was called lockdown camera shots, which is when you're matching animation to live action. With live action, you have a what's the term of the camera? Certain sort of camera rig where you can carry it and kind of walk around like this, you know. I'll think of the name when I.
Steadicam?
Steadicam, thank you very much. Yeah. So we shoot stuff with Steadicam and all. It's like no problem. But animation, all the registration is locked down. So because otherwise you'll have drift, and then the character looks like he's floating, like he's not really connected to the background. So that's like in the old Ray Harryhausen movies, like Jason and the Argonauts. And all. They had, you notice there's no camera moves. They lock down the camera when it's an effect shot. So, you know, so we had a lot of problems with what's called registration, which was making sure that the rabbit was inside the room. Robert Zemeckis, the director, told us at the beginning. He said, "We're not making some cereal commercial here. You got to believe that the rabbit is really in the room, sitting next to Hoskins, or this movie doesn't work." And Zemeckis made sure that he says, "I don't want it to be like those commercials where the human beings here and the cartoon characters here, and they don't interact. I want them to touch one another. I want them to muss each other's hair, to grab them, to physical, like when Roger's at Eddie Valiant's brother's desk, and he says, 'Get away from that desk,' and he picks his fingers up, he leaves fingerprints. So there's all these kind of tactile things to make you believe that the character's real. And I remember when the movie was done, and we had a celebration in New York at Radio City Music Hall. Like we all went up to the Rainbow Room at the top of Rockefeller Center, and I was talking with the one of the senior opticals people at ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, and he says, it's the hardest movie we've ever done. He says the space operas like Star Wars, he goes, we got that down already. Spaceship, zap, zap, boom. We got that. He says, this one was hard because we were trying to make reality with cartoon characters. So it's like when Jessica Rabbit's running down an alleyway, she's throwing off like two shadow levels. And all that stuff had to be perfect. And if it's not perfect, you'll see it. If it's perfect, you won't notice. Then it's no big deal. Jessica
Rabbit was my first true love.
Yeah, I know. It's gorgeous. Yeah, And we used to have, I talk to when I teach storyboard and directing, I talk to my students about, you have to be willing to admit what's called a happy accident. And a happy accident is when something just comes up that you just go, oh, let's leave that in. That's good. I like that, And when Jessica's singing her song in the nightclub, the live action actors that are in the room are doing what's called walla. And walla means that you make enough room noise so it sounds like a room full of people, but you don't say anything so that it interrupts the actor speaking. So the actors are speaking on the front, and people are in the back going, walla, 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 walla. So that's what the actors do. And it creates ambient room noise. So when Jessica was doing her song, all the other people in the nightclub are going, oh, Jessica, he's so, it's so beautiful. And at the very end, when Jessica leans into Hoskins and goes, why don't you do right like some other men do? And she says, get out of here, give me some money too. Why don't you do right like some other men? Pause. Do. And Jessica leans in, grabs Hoskins by the tie, pulls him right up so that their lips are almost touching. And she says, why don't you do right like some other men? Pause. Do, like that. During that pause, a guy in the back went, oh! And Bob Zemeckis was like, is that funny? Is that funny? Yes, leave it in. It's funny. Leave it in. Because, the thing with these movies is like you stare at them so much that after a while you can't tell. You just like, that's why it's good to show them to like test audiences, because some stuff that you thought were just okay is hysterical. People just laugh. And then other things that you thought were like really going to kill as a joke just kind of sit there. So it's sometimes you need a fresh eye to go, no, leave it. That's good. Leave that in. I like that. So.
We see this desire of interaction between the real and the drawn world since Gertie the Dinosaur. I believe many films that came after Who Framed Roger Rabbit built upon its innovations, but seem to have fell short in relation to it. So you have already referenced many of the elements that made this film so special, but it's not only a defining moment in the history of animation, but also of pop culture as a whole. What more can you reflect upon about this huge impact on pop culture on a global level?
Well, I think, people don't realize it now, but before Roger Rabbit and Little Mermaid and all, traditional animation didn't have a good reputation among business people. Like in the 70s and all, if a feature animated film would just barely make its budget back, and then it turned a profit in things like selling toys and merchandise and first sales of video and then DVD. But like a movie like Oliver and Company, which wasn't a bad movie. It did okay. It made like about a 30% profit. So, but for the money guys, for the people like who were looking at like Star Wars or Steven Spielberg or Close Encounters, they wanted gigantic hits, and animated films just didn't generate that kind of thing. I think American Tail was the first one that did like 150 million just in North America, and then another 200 million overseas. And then Roger Rabbit was just this international hit. It was like so big, and it got 4 Oscars. There was a period there. Roger Rabbit came out in 1988, and then 1989 was The Simpsons, and Little Mermaid. So there was this period where we call it the Great 2D Renaissance, or like the animation Renaissance, because you had Roger Rabbit, you had Little Mermaid. You had The Simpsons. You had MTV Liquid Television with Eon Flux and Beavis and Butthead and Ren and Stimpy, and then Family Guy, and all these shows were all happening all in that same time period. Suddenly, like being an animation person was cool again. Like for a long time, you say, "What do you do? You're an animator." What? Like, is that's a job? And then suddenly, like, oh, people like us. Wow.
You referenced Disney and the 2D Renaissance. You went on to participate on Disney's animation revival and contributed to some of the most outstanding films in the last decades. Can you tell us a little bit more about that particular moment of your career in Disney?
Well, it was a very exciting time, and it was very just to get the chance to work there. It was so exciting to be there as an animator. Go like I'm in that line of animators, and studios come and go, projects come and go, but when you work at Disney's, you feel the weight of the history in a place. You know that you're sitting. It's like old sports players, like you play football or you play baseball. They all know all the famous old stars, and your record is being placed next to theirs. So you're going to be put next to an old football star, and they go, well, this guy was better than you, or this guy could have beaten you. And with Disney animators, your work is being compared to the old Disney animators, and saying, are you as good as Frank Thomas or Mel Call or Bill Tytla? And that's very daunting. That's very scary, but it's scary in an exciting way, because you know that you're doing the absolute best work you possibly can. And you're surrounded by people that are all fantastic artists. So it's like it's like I joke about if you like to go bowling, and you bowl, and all the people around you are all excellent bowlers, you just get better because you don't want to look like a fool, But yeah, it was very exciting. The mere fact that I was friends with Roy Disney, and it's like sitting there, this is like. It's Roy Disney, and he looks so much like his uncle. It's amazing, and he smoked like his uncle. Like his uncle chain smoked, and Roy chain smoked, and also, and it was such a nice man, But just to get a chance to work with all these people, and and Frank and Ollie and the 9 Old Men and all, like I got to know Mark Davis really well. who created Cruella de Vil and Maleficent, and was one of the great animators. And just to be able just to hang out with them as an equal was just so exciting. And also to know that your movies were making such a big hit, such a big wave, because in the 70s and 80s, I worked on a lot of movies that the thing is, you work just as hard on the flops as you do on the hits. So you work just as hard on the movies that don't do well. And so in the 70s and 80s, I worked on a lot of films like Rock and Rule and Star Chasers, The Legend of Orin, and Challenge of the GoBots, and all these things. And they're like, they didn't do that well, up and down a little bit. While like at the Disney ones, when it hits really big, and everybody knows, and you affect so many children and people. You tell kids that you drew Beauty and the Beast, and a big smile comes on their face, and like, ooh, okay, and that's a nice feeling. It's, you feel like that your work is being appreciated, and it counts for something. Like it has an impact with people.
I'm thinking specifically about Disney and about the classic stories as Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Collodi's adaptation, Pinocchio, etc. Many great stories have been told in animation, but very few survive to the test of time and go on to become classics. The Lion King, it seems to me that it will be one of those few rare cases of something new, that relatively new, when we compare it to the Grimms and Andersons and Collodi that were adapted to animation. But it will retain its relevance for many, many years to come. Can you tell us about your experience and your contribution to this movie and to the construction of its mythology?
Oh yeah. Well, Lion King. Originally they started Lion King and Pocahontas at the same time, and the idea was always Lion King was Hamlet in Africa, and Pocahontas was Romeo and Juliet in the Virginia forest. And so we had two crews going, and I was originally going to be on like at the beginning, everybody thought Pocahontas was going to be the big film, and Lion King, whatever it does, but then like Pocahontas went into some rewrites. They had to rewrite the script, so I went on to Lion King. While they were fixing it, I wound up becoming head of story on Pocahontas afterwards, but. When I was on Lion King, I got to do work on a lot of the musical numbers, like the Simba's song when he's young said, "I just can't wait to be king," and a few of those things. And when Pumbaa and Timon sing the funny version of "Can You Feel the Love Tonight," and all, so a bunch of those things. And I was in on a lot of the story meetings. And what was interesting about it was, in the beginning and everything, we were trying to do interesting stuff with the lions, and we sit around and we go, okay, what do lions do? What do they actually do? They sleep, have sex, and kill things. You go, okay, well, sleeping is boring. We can't show sex. and we got left is killing things. And then we found out the male lions don't even hunt. The female lions hunt. The male lions just lay around and piss on the border and then mark their territory. That's all they do. and plus, they're not in the jungle. It's not a jungle. They're in the grasslands. And so it's actually king of the veldt. Would be more appropriate. But Elton John was writing the music and everything, and he would be writing this little pop melodies and all. And it was Hans Zimmer. They hired Hans Zimmer because he had done this movie called The Power of One with Richard Harris, which took place in South Africa, with a lot of that beautiful African, like the Zulu drums and Ladysmith Black Mambazo and the choruses and all. And Hans Zimmer is the one who brought in all that heavy African orchestration and just made it so beautiful, because we'd be working from a cassette, which was just Elton John and his keyboard. He would just have his keyboard and he'd be like, and then when we heard the finish with all the African music, we were like, damn, that's good. that's really good. And and then it was a little while before they brought Pumbaa and Timon in. And then the two voice actors of Pumbaa and Timon sort of like upped the comedy, because what we tried to do was, it's a comedy, but we killed the father. The father's dead. Like, he never comes back, and so it was very tricky to dance. To walk that step between, when it's dramatic, it's very dramatic, and when it's funny, it's very funny. That was hard, to get that right balance.
What were your thoughts concerning the 2019 version of the?
Oh, that one is. I don't watch those things. It hurts my heart. I don't want to say. Well, like, I saw the Beauty and the Beast one, and I was just like, oh God, I don't like that. I didn't watch Aladdin, and I don't want to. It's just me personally. I like the old ones myself. I know that makes me old-fashioned, but. I just think there's a charm to the old, to the hand-drawn stuff, that in the 3D stuff, it just doesn't look the same.
You were one of the driving forces behind the creation of DreamWorks animation unit.
Yes.
What were the biggest challenges of those times?
Well, I think it was establishing a brand. There's a lot of very strong people, working on the projects, and but you have to find an identity for yourself. So, because everybody thought, well, we're just going to do imitation Disney, and we wanted to do more than that, but it took a little while to find ourselves. Where Prince of Egypt was a classic in its own way, and I know a lot of young people who love Prince of Egypt and stuff, just think it's a terrific film. Personally, I like things that are a little more funny, but that's just me. I like funny stuff. But then I did a lot of good work on Shrek and Spirit. We were trying to do fun stuff, but it was sort of like starting from nowhere, and just like immediately, like you say, you hit the ground running. Like you start, and you immediately have to start turning out films. And the studio, for a long time, there was this duel between our top executive Jeffrey Katzenberg and Michael Eisner, in charge of Disney, where they were, Disney would, Katzenberg would make a deal with ABC Television to do TV series, so Eisner and Disney would buy ABC. To cut them off,
But then you went on to Warner's. So in a way, as you mentioned, you had the privilege of playing in all the major teams.
Yeah. And again too, it's like, besides the 9 old men, I was also good friends with Chuck Jones. Like, I knew Chuck very well, and everything. And because Chuck was another history fan. And everything, so we would get together. We would talk about old history, and he loved to talk about stuff like that. And he would tell some great stories. But it was a joy to work for Warner Brothers also. Warner Brothers was a little different in that Disney and DreamWorks, their whole prime directive, like the center of their business is animation. So they have to do good quality feature animation. When you get to Warner Brothers, Warner's is such a gigantic company that animation is just like one little thing they do, and if they stop doing it, it won't really bother them very much. Like, they don't really care. It's like the TV shows they do and the movies they do. That's like their main thing, and then if the animation does well, that's great. But they're sort of like they're not as committed as the Disney and DreamWorks people were, where it's all about animation.
As an educator, what do you believe are the main challenges to prepare the next generation of animators? You already told us about, in the beginning of our conversation, about the the ending of knowledge from one generation to another. What do you see as the main challenges for this particular generation of animators that you are helping to prepare right now?
Yeah, I think the problem we have right now is everybody is so everybody thinks of doing animation as learning software. So like as soon as I learn what's the right button to push, like just tell me what button I'll push and I'll be a great animator. And like, no, it's not it. That's not the way it works. No, it's still, it's trying to explain to people to like, when I started in animation, it was pretty simple. It was animation and live action. So you go, okay, I want to do animation. Then there's character animation and there's effects animation. You go, okay, I want to do character animation. Then I found out there's a split in character animation, where there's character animation and there's personality animation. And personality animation is that when you create a character that's so complete that he's alive. Ariel the Little Mermaid is alive, is a living being. Like most people understand Ariel or Simba, or Genie better than they understand their brother or sister or mother or whatever. It's a complete being, and it's completely artificial. Ariel isn't just Jodie Benson, the voice, or Glenn Keane, the animator, or the designer, or the director. It's all those people together is the Little Mermaid, and the Little Mermaid's alive. So to create a character that perfect, that it becomes a memory, becomes something for people, is a great thing, to strive towards. And you can't do it just by learning like what button to push.
Yeah. What are you working right now? Are you focusing exclusively on education? Are you preparing any new projects?
Yeah, I think now I've got tenure at the University here of Southern California, and it's a big university, and I enjoy my teaching. And I think at my age right now, it's kind of a younger person's business, and I think there's so many young people trying to break in and all that I feel like I'm okay. Like I've done my films. I'm proud of my record. Richard Williams used to say, when you work on a big project like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, that's your armor, and that's your, that's mine. So when I worked with Seamus, we were working on some very low budget educational film for children, but Seamus worked on Snow White, Pinocchio. That's big, and Gulliver's Travels. And then, so I've got Lion King, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Shrek, those are mine. That's my armor, And so I don't begrudge younger people wanting to build some armor. And I also like writing histories of our period now. So besides the history of animation book, I'm working on a book now just about the 90s, just about the animation renaissance and just how that big turnover happened. And I don't know if you saw recently, but I wrote a cookbook.
Yeah, that I haven't saw.
It actually got an award, actually for like a best in world kind of.
I imagine that you must be contacted by lots of fans. What was the most surprising thing that a fan ever told you or shared with you?
I think one of my favorite memories was when I was animating on Beauty and the Beast. I was animating Beast, and I was doing the scenes of when the Beast is eating his breakfast in the morning. He was eating his porridge, his oatmeal, and I came up with the idea of like, while Belle is sipping her porridge with a spoon, the Beast just sticks his face in the bowl like a dog and goes like that, and he looks up with big cheeks like, whoa, like that, and then he's learning how to eat properly like a human being. So that's the scene I did. A year or two later, I was working on something else, and they took a group of young children. I think they're like in early grades, but they're around. They take these little children around, and they were showing them around the studio. And they said, "Okay, this is Mr. Sito, and Mr. Sito is an animator, and he'll explain what you do." And I said to the children, I said, "How many of you saw Beauty and the Beast?" And the kids all go. And I said, "Do you remember when the Beast is eating his breakfast in the morning? He's eating his porridge." And the children didn't say anything. They all went, and that just made me feel so good. Like I teared up. I was like, wow.